Okay, lesson 28. What is yoga? Yoga is an eightfold path. It starts with yama, followed by niyama, followed by asana, followed by pranayama, followed by today's subject, Pratyahara. After that follows the 3 levels of meditation, starting with dharana, which is concentration, canalizing thought, and with that energy, until that leads to an altered state of consciousness. It is dhyana, which is actual meditation, which then leads to the possibility of deep connection with matter, deep consciousness, called samadhi. This is today's subject, and it is an important subject. First and foremost, in most yoga studios, the eightfold path is not practiced. Usually only one is practiced, which is asana. And even that is not done correctly. Then you have the more serious programs, more professional programs, where you do learn yama, niyama, asana, pranayama, pratyahara. But then, pratyahara is very often a very undervalued subject. Like with yama, for example, non-violence. In most programs, yama and niyama is discussed in one class. And about non-violence, you will be taught, don't kill your neighbor. Maybe a little bit more, but we spent a whole class discussing just one yama each time. Because there are so many subtle aspects, there are so many practical aspects, daily life situations where it enters in a very practical way. Don't kill your neighbor, that really is not helpful. Everybody understands that. It's the same with pratyahara. Pratyahara is very often taught as, don't attach yourself to material wealth. Don't attach yourself to status. And that's about it. I simplify it a little bit. Surely they may tell you a little bit more about it. But the subject is closed very quickly after 5 or 10 minutes. We have read the first chapter of the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, and if you read between the lines, you see that there is nothing wrong with material wealth. On the contrary, you have to have a foundation, a material foundation, stable material foundation, which automatically includes a certain level of material wealth to allow you to walk the spiritual path. people who are struggling for life on a daily basis, they have no room to practice yoga, leave alone room to pursue the spiritual path. So it's just too simplified, too simple to just brush off the subject of Pratyahara in such a simple way, because it has actually a very great importance. It's actually one of the, you see the order in which the Eightfold Path presents itself. It comes after you have laid the foundation with practice, studying yama niyama, which means studying yourself on a moral level, on a subconscious level, asana, pranayama, which leads to increased consciousness and sensitivity, and then pranayama follows. There is a reason why it follows after the first 4 steps, because you have indeed now become more conscious and more sensitive. I have met throughout the years, and I have experienced myself, increased emotional instability because of not knowing about Pratyahara. So yoga led to increased consciousness and sensitivity, which, among many other things, it leads you to become aware of your past. And there will be nice and pleasant experiences in your past, but they don't attract you that much. What attracts you is those that are unpleasant. The traumatic experience, the painful experiences. You naturally become attracted to those first. Not only that, you become aware of other beings suffering, misery. You become compassionate. So you become aware of other people's pain, suffering, and you want to do something about that. You become aware of animals suffering. You want to do something about that. You become aware of a war that is taking place on the other side of the globe. And it hurts you and you want to do something about that. Pratyahara is a very rational approach to deal with that vulnerability. To walk the spiritual path, you have to allow yourself to be open and therefore vulnerable. But you also have to have tools. I would almost use the word weapons. You have to have tools to protect yourself in that vulnerable state. And it is, if you are conscious and you approach it in a conscious way, it is very possible to avoid the negative aspects of your increased consciousness and sensitivity. And you do that by rationalizing it, and then deciding to detach from it. Pratyahara is detachment. Not from your material wealth or your status. Pratyahara, detachment, is to detach yourself from anything and everything that disturbs you, that distracts you, that threatens you, that keeps you from doing what is most important for you. It sounds very obvious what I'm saying, but many people cannot do this or do not know how to do this, simply because we've never been taught. And also because our functioning is mostly subconscious. So when we become more conscious, this sounds like a paradox, but when we become more conscious of ourselves and our past, we subconsciously are attracted by the trauma and the misery, the pain, and because we are only human, because of ego, we start to embrace the pain. We drown ourselves in the pain. It's only human. You would say, if you listen to me telling you about how this happens, oh, that is stupid. No, we all do this. It is not stupid, it is human. And that is why it's so important that we become conscious of it, and that we also develop tools to handle it. I think I told you the anecdote of me dropping out of Ajita's course twice, and one day visiting him to talk about all my problems, because I felt I was full of problems. And he said, within a minute he broke me off. He said, Ron, stop talking about your past, stop talking about your problems. What do you want? So I said, I want to go to Korea. That was my obsession at that time. But I also thought it was a mountain too high to climb. I really couldn't see how I could ever put that into realization. But anyway, that was my obsession, so I said, I want to go to Korea. So his next question was, what do you need to do to realize that? So I said, I need to finish my courses with you. I need to finish my night school education. And I need to earn and save enough money to be able to at least stay 2 years in Korea. Then he said, okay, now stop thinking about the misery of your brothers and how you want to help them and how impossible that is. Stop thinking about your childhood misery. From today, first of all, you come back to my class, register for the current course, go back to school, which also I had dropped out, and continue working, saving enough money, and just start focusing on those things and don't go back anymore. Every time you go back, you take back your energy from that memory, from that thought, from that emotion. Just take it back, deny it, take it back, and focus that energy on your current projects. From that moment, it was the best advice I ever had in my life, up until today. From that moment on, everything slowly but certainly started to go towards me actually going to Korea. And that mountain that seemed too high to climb became easy to climb, because you just go through the daily steps. And it may look like impossible, but if you just do what you can do today, the next step will present itself naturally tomorrow. And when all the things were done, when I had my diplomas from Ajita and from school, and I had enough money, naturally you go. I contacted my Hapkido teacher, and I visited for just 3 weeks in '96. You go to the travel agency, and you set a date, and you buy a ticket, an open ticket, and you gather all the things that you think you need, like toothsticks or whatever, just practical things, the clothes that you think you need, and the things that you think you need, and it just goes natural from that moment on. That is Pratyahara. Ajita didn't talk about Pratyahara, but he told me, forget about the past, focus on today and the future. And that is exactly what Pratyahara is about. And again, it seems so obvious, but so many people are in fact stuck in their present life because they are stuck in the past. And I have been very stuck like that for many years, since childhood, going forward. Yoga brought change, but then, being just human, there is still that tendency to get stuck. So it seems very obvious, but actually it's not an easy thing to do, especially if you have never learned about it, never heard about it. We have a tendency to cherish, especially our misery. And that's okay as long as you know it, and as long as you know when to say stop. Now you're bothering me, you're distracting me, you're actually, in fact, you are destroying my life. Moving forward. Pratyahara literally is, your energy is there. Often it is in the past, but it can be in a present day situation or an unconstructive future situation, something that is destructive, is negative. The moment that you become conscious of that, because as yogis, that is your important tool, that is the alertness of the deer, of the heart chakra. The moment you become aware of it, you must then take concrete steps. The moment you are aware of it, you must not just allow yourself to be a victim of the situation. You must start to take concrete steps. That means you detach from that memory or that thought or that person. You take back that energy, because thought is energy. You take back that energy and you redirect it to an object of your choice. Something that you have determined is constructive, is important, is part of what you want to do and where you want to go with yourself and your life and your future. Pratyahara is maybe something that you apply in social situations, just as a form of good manners. For example, when you visit people, there comes a time that you want to go home. So let's say it's 4:45. You have a feeling that 5 o'clock you want to go home. But if you wait until 5 o'clock and suddenly you get up and you say, hey, bye, it was nice meeting you today. This is very harsh. Because everything is energy, your heart is there, your heart is mingling with the hearts of other beings, and suddenly acting like that is a form of violence. So without even giving it a thought, most people approach this in a different way. You have decided for yourself you want to leave around 5, so 4:30 you already say, I think around 4:30 I should go. I should go home and start preparing dinner, or should walk the dogs or something. But then you stay a little more, you drink another cup of tea and you chat a little bit more. Around 15 minutes later you say, I'm going to leave soon. You kind of wrap up the things that you were talking about. You get your coat from the coat hanger, you put on your shoes or whatever, gather your smartphone and things. And while on your way to the front door, you have a little chat, still light-hearted, and you say your goodbyes and you leave. No violence, no abrupt tearing apart of the hearts that are connected. Many people do this when they have a job and then they change jobs. You've worked with your colleagues for years, you miss them. So what do? When you have some room, you go back to your old company and you have coffee with your old colleagues. In the beginning, maybe you do that once a month or so, because you're attached. Pratyahara is detachment. You're attached. Your heart is still a little bit there. But if you continue to do that for the next 10 years, going there every month to have a coffee with your ex-colleagues, you stay stuck in the past. So if you catch yourself doing like that, staying stuck in the past, you have to start taking control. So go there every month, have a coffee with your colleagues, but after a couple of months you should kind of start detaching yourself to be able to move on with your life and your new job. So from 1 month you choose to make it 2 months before you go again. You go 2, 3, 4 times, you go every 2 months, then you force yourself to make it every 3 months. And in that way it will slowly wear off, and there comes a day that there is no attachment anymore. In that way, very gradually and harmlessly, non-violently, you detach. Not only you move on, but also you allow those people to move on in a very gentle, gradual way. On page 2, there is a very important paragraph because that deals with the past. I will just read it. If you're being bothered by bad experiences from your past, you also have to withdraw your attention from those events, people, and thoughts. First and foremost, do not blame yourself, as blame is counterproductive and does not lead to anything constructive. Blame and guilt often bring you into a negative spiral of self-destructive behavior. Come back to the present and focus your energy on yourself and to your present and future projects, like studies, work, and current relationships. Start looking forward instead of backward. Remember that energy follows thought. If your thought is in the past, your energy is in the past. If your mind is with negative experiences, memories of the past, you undergo negative emotions even though nothing negative is actually happening now in the present. You keep regurgitating. Understanding of the principle that there is no good and bad, that is yoga's idea. There is no good and bad, there only is. It's also a Buddhist principle. So understanding of the principle that there is no good and bad, and that all events in life are designed to bring you where your destiny is, your dharma, will be of great help to detach from your past. What happens when we become more conscious of ourselves and then automatically investigate the past, we come across memories of people that have done wrong to us or wrongdoing by ourselves. Things that we regret, feel self-blame for. But blame goes 2 ways. It can also extend to people who were in your life in the past. Very often people have issues with parents or siblings or other family members. The reason why there is no good and bad in yoga, we make those labels, is because everything in the end is designed to bring us to where we are, to where we belong. That we call that Dharma. There's a lot of mystery surrounding Dharma, but Dharma really means essence. Your essence. So, you know the phrase that you hear often in religious and spiritual circles, that there is a plan for everybody. When you learn yoga properly, you learn that everything that happens is designed to teach you something. Teach you something about your life, about yourself, about your qualities, unexpected qualities. And it teaches you something about where to go in life. When I grew up, when I was a young child, I wanted to be a truck driver because I thought these big trucks were very impressive. I probably even thought about wanting to be a policeman or a fire brigade, working at the fire brigade. But then later, as a teenager, I wanted to be a doctor. I never thought about being a yoga teacher. And when I discovered yoga, I also didn't plan to be a yoga teacher. Yoga was for me. It helped me. But I was interested in Hapkido, and I wanted to have a Hapkido studio, Hapkido gym. But instead of following what I want, I just went with the flow. And I became a yoga teacher by default, just because the opportunity presented itself. People asked. I just met people from the Dutch community who, of course, the first time you meet them at the embassy, it's some embassy event, the first time you meet them, people are curious why you are here, what you are doing here. So, who are you, and what is your name, and what do you do, and yeah, well, it's a little bit a strange story because all those people work for Shell, Unilever, ASML, and what have you. There's this guy practicing Hapkido who's a yoga teacher. Yoga teacher? Oh, hey, our yoga teacher just left. How about can you teach us? Oh, okay. Where and when? And so I started with a couple of people on a Wednesday afternoon. And it just moved forward like that, very naturally. And it felt so good to share. And whenever I was invited to give lectures about yoga, in the beginning in the expat community. You have a SIWA, have you heard of SIWA? Seoul International Women Association. They have those events at some hotel or somewhere at a club, and they invite people to tell them something interesting. And they were very impressed by the things that I told them about yoga, because they've heard it all before, but the story that I had to tell was so very different. And so people became intrigued and wanted to learn, and so you set up another course, and it just very naturally, you get interviews with newspapers and magazines and what have you. It just all evolved very naturally. That is Dharma. If something makes you enthusiastic, if something makes you feel alive, if something uplifts you, literally, because your energy is there, it is something to pursue. But that automatically means that if something depresses you, if something causes friction, negativity, darkness, that means literally your energy is down. there is a signal from the universe telling you you're on the wrong path. You're pursuing the wrong thing, no matter how much you actually want it. If something brings you down, literally, it leads to destruction. It will lead to conflict. If something uplifts you, literally, those expressions, people never think about what they really mean, but it's literally uplifting when you feel happy, enthusiastic, inspired. It just shows that pursuing that particular something elevates your energy to the crown chakra. So it's not only on your mat that you pursue spirituality. In the end, you pursue spirituality by listening to the vibration, following the resonance that is everywhere around you. And if it feels good and the vibration is positive, you explore what it is about and if there is something for you. It sounds a little bit like a hippie style of living life. You stay with both feet on the ground, but you have to start listening to that resonance. And this is, of course, about Pratyahara. This is about how to deal with negative experiences, trauma, and what have you. When you can overcome and detach from the emotion that comes with the memory and the thought, you will be able to extract valuable information from that memory. It teaches you something about yourself, and it will teach you something about where to go, what to do with yourself and with your life. Blame. When we blame our parents for our misfortune, that is negative and not helpful at all. Your parents are only human beings. You want to be treated as a human being yourself, especially when it comes to your imperfection, because after all, I'm only human. You have to extend that attitude towards other people. And people go out from the point of view that anybody who has done wrong to you did that only out of ignorance. Ignorance. They too later have their feelings of guilt and regret because of what they did to you. But that is their portion, that is their karma. Understand that. But if you can understand that what they did and that hurt you, they did out of ignorance, that also means that extends to you. The things that you have done wrong in the past, because we have all done things wrong in the past, just like everybody else, that you now regret, you did out of ignorance. And this is crucial, because not only can we drown ourselves in blame, feeling the victim of other people's actions, we can also destroy ourselves because of the bad things that we did to others, the hurt that we have caused ourselves to others. And it is important that we become aware of it, yes, but it is futile, it is useless to become destroyed by it. But this is usually what happens with people. If you look at people who are in jail, incarcerated people because they committed crimes, it's because they were not able to detach themselves from things that happened in the past. And it led them to have a very negative attitude, not listen to their heart, and they committed things that eventually broke the law. You don't hardly ever find stable people in prisons. It's people that were already a victim of their own past, their childhood, and what have you. So yoga in prison would be perfect, actually. I've thought about that, doing that as a volunteer or something, but I have this issue with, my Korean is not so bad, but it's not good enough to have deep, meaningful conversations with those people incarcerated, but maybe something for the future anyway. But I hope you can see the picture here. If you're disturbed by something of the past, try to be conscious of the mechanics of it. What does it do with you? How do you feel about it? And if it is, try to determine if it's useful or not. And most of the time it's not useful. What is useful is the rational information, conclusions that you extract from it. That is where you really start to grow. That is also what liberation means, that. Being able to learn from it so that you can leave it behind. The reason why I met Ajita, and at that time I was in my late 20s, I think. So already almost 3 decades of life behind me. I was drowning. I was drowning in... I discovered yoga when I was 20 years old, so I had already been changing my life for 8-9 years, and yet, out of ignorance, I lost myself time and time again in the past. That is why I dropped out of Ajita's courses, and that is why I dropped out of night school. That is why I drank beer Friday and Saturday night. Not one glass, but until it came out of my ears. So Ajita's advice at that moment, that really made a difference. And actually, if you look at it, so simple. What do you want? What do you need to do for it? Go to work. Distracted? Detach and redirect your energy to what is important now and in the future. For you, not for your brothers who are killing themselves with drugs and alcohol, not for anybody else. Now it's time for you. That is detachment, that's Pratyahara, that is how you have to approach it. It sounds selfish maybe, but not a negative selfishness. We need to be selfish sometimes, without harming other people, of course, to be able to move forward. We will talk about this again, but I really hope that you understand that the past is not something to drown in. I think I have told you about my vacations to southern France in the late 1980s, which is about 30 years after the Second World War. And invariably, in the southern France, when you go into a small village, every village has a square, village square. Every square has a bar where they sell tobacco, coffee, croissants, and wine and beer. And every bar has those people who experienced the war, who experienced the occupation by the German military soldiers, and who can't stop talking about it. 30, 40 years later, every day you meet them, you hear the same story again and again. But what you also see, they never moved on. Those people are either without work, living off of support, social security, a very poor existence, or they have very simple jobs at the local city council, town council, doing menial jobs like working in the print shop or gathering garbage, or they've never been able to move on. And whenever they can, they come to the village square to the bar, and while drinking beer or wine or pastis, which is delicious, only regurgitate. Until the last day, until the day they die, they keep regurgitating that experience. And it's tragic, don't get me wrong. They have every right to be taken serious and to be respected. But they are shortchanging themselves. Somebody should help them. Some counselor or maybe a yogi should help them, teach them, hey, what happened? Yes, it's bad, but it can empower you. It can help you find a whole new way forward. Unexpected. Revolutionary. Those people need a kind of a kick in the butt under the Muladhara chakra to get moving, to get out of that being stuck in that emotion. Look, what the Germans did, it has happened throughout history, time and time again. People tend to focus only on the last event. In Korea, we focus on what Japan did. In Europe, we focus on what Germany did. But 30 years before that, there was another oppressor. And 100 years before that, there was another occupier. And 150 years, 500 years, 1,000. There have always been occupations, there have always been wars. And if you look at it, especially as a yogi, you develop the ability to oversee, to see the whole picture. Now what do you see? Every conflict leads to progress. Every conflict leads to growth. What am I doing here? I'm trying to paint a positive picture about something that we always see as negative. Because we look at war, we can only see the misery and the bombs and the killing and what have you. But there's always something good coming out of it. I have told you before that evil is short-term and immediate. That is what you see in a war. But wars always end. Why? Because the good always prevails over evil, but evil is direct and immediate, short-term, because it has no conscience. It has no yamas and niyamas, no moral foundation. The good eventually always wins, but it takes time. That is why wars never end 1 or 2 days after they start. It takes years for the forces of good to gather momentum because they are bound by the yamas and niyamas. So you always see evolution after every conflict. You always see growth after every conflict. Not only in a material way, but also in sense of enlightenment, in terms of people becoming more conscious, more considerate, more enlightened. Look what happened after the Second World War. Global institutions were established, like UNICEF, like United Nations, like also even to protect animals. All kinds of good things have come out of it. You know, my father's side of the family, they were all killed in that war, and yet I have no grudge. My best friend in Korea is in fact a German. That sounds crazy, but he is just a human being and I'm just a human being. And there is a chemistry. So regardless of the flag that he was born under, is totally irrelevant. That is possible if you have vision, if you have oversight. Yes? Sorry that I ignored you so long. I had to practice Pratyahara. No, you have a question.
What happens if you have like a colleague or a friend who who is going through a lot of things and you want to tell them this, but they're not ready for it. Like you want to give them a kick in the butt, but maybe the timing is wrong, and instead you see them constantly hurting, and now it's affecting you because they're constantly talking to you about it. Like how do you set that, how do you navigate that when you want to help somebody who's not?
We will talk about the issue of helping. Actually, you're not allowed to help. Sounds strange, but we will get to that. You are not a cloth hanger for other people's misery. So if you have a colleague that regularly pours out their misery on you, you have to find a way to stop that, because it harms you. As a yogi, you try to see it as an experiment, because what you will over time, because of your increased perception, consciousness, sensitivity, you will start seeing people's karma. That also means you will develop the ability to map out people's future. It's not concrete science, but you will have a very good idea where they will go with their life. That is one thing that you can do with people who you see need help. But the determination that people need help comes from you, and that is where it goes wrong. Those people have to determine themselves that they need help, and only then they will open up and can be helped. But if you are the one that determines that they need to be helped, which shows your big heart, they will not open up, they will even deny, or even start accusing you of their misery. You will bump into a brick wall time and time again. I have bumped into a brick wall time and time again, to my great frustration, leading me to need to meet Ajita and have him talk sense into me, kick me in the Muladhara chakra. That's basically what he did. Because my brothers didn't want to be helped. So, next week we will discuss some odds and ends, and we will continue about the subject of Pratyahara and have a look at some particular examples. After that, we will talk about subtle anatomy of yoga, and then we have one more major subject. We call it the philosophy of the kleshas, which is the science of misery. And part of that discussion is helping or not helping people. But generally, we're not allowed to help people. You understand why? I have been trying to tell you from the beginning of this course that the misery that we experience is designed to teach us something. So, people who need help, clearly, they are experiencing misery. If you help them solve their problem, they haven't learned the lesson that they were supposed to learn from it, that they can't see. And so the misery will simply happen again. If you want to help people, you must help them help themselves. Don't solve the problem for them. Don't give them money. But try to hand them some tips, some handles, try to help them on their way to help deal with their problem. You will see that many people don't want to. And at that moment, you have to practice Pratyahara. Otherwise, it will emotionally destroy you. You then simply have to accept it is their karma. They are not ready yet. not easy, but it's something that you need to do out of self-protection. And this is why Pratyahara is so important, and it cannot just be swept under the rug with some platitudes like don't attach to your status, your wealth, or whatever. Let's leave it at this. Energy is your capital. You see here this samurai at the bottom of page 2, and the text that you are a warrior. You are a warrior, but you're only as strong as the energy that you have. And all these distractions to the past, to emotions, to regret, what have you, suck out your energy. So what you're really doing when you detach is bring that energy all back to yourself. And naturally that energy will manifest in positive ways for you. But it cannot manifest if it's not there, if it's being distracted. Okay, let's have a short break.